All right, Jason, welcome to Sober Dad Crew.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being on. It was nice we shifted our time a little early. We were both like tired, time change. I was up early hauling a kid to soccer because it's what you do. So
Yeah, I
we're
spent
old.
4 hours in a car, so this is good.
Yeah.
I'm going
Do you
straight to
just
bed.
wake up early? I fucking now that I'm in my
Ugh.
50s, I just cannot sleep late. It's terrible.
I wanna sleep late. I have dogs, right? So I have 2 dogs, and one has, like, stage 3 kidney disease, so he pees even more than I do. So he's up
Do
at
you have to
2,
do like
5.
the subcutaneous fluids?
I don't know what that is, but I have to give him, like, supplements, like, I have to give him a phosphorus oil, a liver supplement, special food. It's like if we didn't have pet insurance, he'd be underground by now. Let's
Yeah,
put
we
it
had a
that way.
cat and you had to like do an IV under the skin.
Yes.
It's like sober pet crew. That's how we're starting tonight. But
Yeah.
I felt for the cat. It was hard, like when your pets get older and all that. But
We did have to do that. We had it's like the skin on the back of his neck. You have to pick it
yeah,
up and jab the needle in there. It
yeah.
was oh, it's
I
terrible.
jabbed myself with that needle once. It was like an 18 gauge needle for anyone who's like aware of those who's had a piercing or something. It was a big ass needle.
You're not
Um,
using, but you're using again. Oh my
yeah,
god.
it was uncomfortable.
The gateway
Um,
drug.
yeah, lactated ringers, right? All right, we digress already. Just for folks listening, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Okay. Jesus, where do I even start? Well, the long and the short of it, I think the last 2 years pretty much sums up like my life and sort of where it was and where things came together and where it is now. I was in the advertising business for like 30 years. I owned visual effects and animation companies. So we did like commercials, music videos, like some movie titles here and there, and just commuted to and from New York City like every day. You know, working like 15-hour days, like crazy weeks. Like I don't think I had dinner once with my family when they were growing up, and I was been miserable for about 20 years out of the 30. Right, just the commuting and just like I really had no passion in that business, even though it's like a creative business. It didn't do it for me creatively, and it was stressful. And COVID hit, and I said to my wife, like, I can't go back. Like, I just can't. Like, it's not that I love working at home. I just can't go back. Like, I'm watching Netflix with my wife. I'm taking my kid to get Starbucks. I'm taking him to school. It's like, it was just too good. So I started doing some research and wound up finding the profession of recovery coach. So, you know, I talked to a couple people that I knew from the rooms of AA, and they turned me on to a place that's by us. It's like a community center, like a recovery community center. And it's just like I took some courses. You know, I got certified as a certified recovery peer advocate. Um, you know, it took a couple months, and that was it. And I said to my partners, we're either closing it, we're selling it, or you're buying me out. Like, and you have a few months. I'm just telling you, it's like I'm not coming back. And at the last second, somebody wound up buying the company, and they stayed, but it allowed me to sort of just walk away and feel good about it, and not like nobody was out of a job or anything like
Yeah,
that. Because that's my whole life. That's all I've worried about is everybody else. And but now I'm working. Like, I haven't done a resume in 25 years, and I haven't been on a job interview in probably that long. And now I'm working, you know, 5 days a week, 35 hours a week. I'm home by 5:30, 6 o'clock most of the time. There's no stress whatsoever. My supervisor is like, "How's your workload? Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "This is the easiest job I've ever had." And I love it because it's like fulfilling. You know, I'm working with people in recovery. It's freaking unbelievable. So that's like, it's not really who I am, but it's like that's where I've been in the last few years, you know?
yeah, and and we'll hit up on other stuff assuredly. How many kids do you have?
2 kids. I have 2 daughters. One is 22. She just graduated from University of Delaware, and she got a job like 3 minutes from our house teaching at an elementary school. So we're not empty nesters. I don't know when we'll be empty nesters. And the other one just is in her freshman year at UConn. So two daughters, one almost 18 and one 22. Yeah.
Yeah. So my older two, my son is 21. He works in HVAC and the trades. And then my 17-year-old's a senior. She wants to go into nursing. And then, the younger two are 8 and 12. So I'm like across the gamut. No babies, no more babies. Don't love them, don't want one.
You need a second
Also,
wind.
yeah, I just got a vasectomy. That means you don't need the second or the third or whatever, the fourth wind for that.
Yeah,
Did you
my
go
dad had
ahead.
a vasectomy and he had it reversed. He had
Oh,
he had a vasectomy. My parents got divorced when I was real young, and he got married again, and he got his vasectomy reversed because his wife, my stepmom, who's a little bit younger, wanted kids. So had the vasectomy reversed and wound up having my half sister.
but then
So
did he have it again?
the vasectomy,
Yeah, did he like vasect, unvasect, and revasect? Maybe we were talking about your dad's testicles here, so
I
like
don't
who
know.
knows? But
I have no idea. I'm not really sure, but it's definitely not something I want to ask.
yeah. All right.
But
Well,
no, but maybe can we three-way right now?
I
We
know
could
I was
call
gonna
him.
say, like, what was that? Did you ever listen to Car Talk? And they would
No,
like call the other people up. So that
like
was pretty
phony phone
fun.
call.
Well, Car Talk was on NPR, and they were these two mechanics, and people would call in. I actually was on that show. You can like find me on one of their episodes, and you would call up, and it was pre-taped, but they didn't know what was coming, so you would be screened by the producer, and you would call, and they would answer your car questions.
Okay.
So, like, my question was about the minivan doors always freezing in the winter, and and they were very funny, and yeah, so it was a National Public Radio thing, and so it was on for years and years and years, and they'd get all kinds of like weird questions, and they'd say, well, what kind of sound is the car making? And the person would like try and make whatever clunking sound, but they were like pretty brilliant at diagnosing these like automotive issues.
That sounds like a question that I would ask because I don't know a ton about cars. So I would ask something like, "Why is the minivan door always freezing?" Like
And
that's
they
that's
had a
car
good
talk for me.
answer, and
Yeah.
they had a solution, because it had happened after the handle came off in my hand, like
Jesus.
trying to get the kids in the car to get them to school, and the fucking hand, I was just like, must have just let out this torrent of curse words.
Yeah, and you live up in Siberia, so I mean,
Yeah,
it's cold.
it's less Siberia than it used to be. I mean, it was friggin' 75 on Thursday on Halloween, which was nice. And we just started an addition on our house, so they were like doing the concrete pour, and I'm like, all right, global warming kind of blows, but it's helping with the
It's
addition on
good.
my
Yeah.
house. Did you always want to be a dad? Did you like know?
It's kind of I don't know. It's like I've heard you ask this question before, and it's kind of a weird question, right? Because I feel like I met my wife when I was 21, she was 19, right? We were in college. We met in college. And I don't I don't know. I didn't know anything at that age, right? So like I certainly didn't think about even wanting to be a dad when I was younger. It just wasn't something that was on my radar, you know? I think it wasn't until I met my wife and we got engaged, and then you get to that stage of life where like everybody's like, when are you getting married? And then your parents are like, when are you having kids? When am I gonna... So that's when I started thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a dad, but I don't think I was ever one of those people that was just like, I feel like women maybe have a little bit more of that maternal instinct, we're just like hit someone over the head and go get a saber-toothed tiger or whatever it is. But I don't know. I never really thought about it. But but I definitely got gung ho when we got married, for sure.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I like the question because I've had people say no,
Yeah.
you know, and the reasons are interesting. I'm someone who sort of always felt like I wanted to. So I think it's interesting to see like where people land on that, especially if they say no, right? I think
Right.
that's sort of an interesting, yours is sort of the evolution of the relationship, and I think a lot of people land on that, or a lot of people were like, I was sort of could go either way, but my wife really wanted to, so you know, we had him. But it's hard, right? Being a dad, it's like a lot of work if you're doing it right. So you should kind of at least
Yeah.
have decided it's for you.
Yeah, you don't want to back into it. It's not
Yeah,
something you want to back into and just like be like, I'll figure it out later if I want to do it or not. No.
yeah. Because
It's
once they're here.
yeah.
It's like you're in it.
You, you can't vasectomy a kid.
Yeah.
It doesn't
No,
work like that.
no. A certain
No.
politician sort of claimed you could in a recent debate.
I was gonna say it and then I was like, maybe I shouldn't say it, you
Ah,
know?
I'm a lefty. It just like I think I've lost a few listeners along the way. But I'm like, well, this is my thing. Like, these are my politics. Like, take it or leave it a little bit,
Yeah.
But
Are you
um,
tense right now?
am I tense? No. Do I
Yeah.
look tense?
No, no, I wasn't. I'm just saying,
Oh,
like the
before the
election's on
election.
Tuesday. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm tense, man. I'm really fucking tense, and
It's
I don't watch the news. I'm not like one of those people that gets caught up in that stuff. But I'm really like I have anxiety, like a little bit of that low level, consistent anxiety, just not knowing what's going to happen on Wednesday. You know what
it
I mean?
it does feel a little scary
Yeah,
because I mean, I just said it. I'm on the left. I land on the left. I feel like what's coming from the other direction is anti-democratic, and I'm about freedom and democracy, and I'm about the process, and I feel like a lot of that stuff is just spinning out. I'm also like about a woman's right to choose. I'm about separation of church and state. I'm
yep,
about, fundamental things that this country is founded on. I'm a believer that we should welcome people to our shores.
yeah,
That is the foundation of this country. So I feel like
S-
what's happening on the right now, and we're older. We remember like Reagan and Bush. When you find yourself going, God, that Bush, that wasn't so bad back then in the
yeah.
80s. I kind of missed that guy. Like when you're thinking about that, shit is spinning out.
Yeah, I said that many times over the course of the last term, not this term, the term before, um, just about George W. You know, like how much we just made fun of him and how stupid he was and how this. And I remember where I was at work when he got elected, and I remember my partner and I at the time we were like, it was like the end of the world. We were like, I can't believe this is happening, and you see him now, and it's like he's like he's nice.
Right.
He'll shake your hand. He's just like all I want. Like the standards are so low. I just want a nice person that can have a conversation and be humane. That's it. That's all I
Right.
want.
And that maybe you can influence the conversation. Like, I mean, I don't love Joe Biden. I, I don't love everything about Kamala, right? But I at least feel like I can have a conversation or
Yeah,
pressure for some change,
yeah,
and that it exists within an established view of sort of normalcy
yeah,
where we respect the political process because votes aren't being stolen. Like, that's not real. Like, I
yeah,
want to live in a world where you can't just claim trees are purple, and because you claim they're purple means it's true. And it
yeah. Well,
feels like,
social media, fuck that.
yeah,
Social media, fuck that. Because there's so much information that flies at you so quickly. There's no time for somebody to check a fact before they pass it on to the next person because they want to get it out the door so quickly. It's like, did you hear so and so? And then all of a sudden, like 90,000 people know about it. There's no pause. There's
yeah,
no pause.
I call it for us oldsters the Walter Cronkite factor, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody believed what he said. They
Oh
might
yeah.
not have agreed, I don't know, whatever, take people who are unhoused, right?
Yeah.
He would talk about that and people
Mm-hmm.
would say, yeah. unhoused people exist. There would be
Yeah.
different ideas on solutions and maybe some different ideas on causation, but
Yeah.
no one denied that the thing
No.
was real.
That people trusted journalists, and it's oh, I don't know. I mean, I could talk about this forever. It's just I just wanted to get it out there that I'm like a little bit yippity,
Well,
where
and
I'm usually not.
I think it does tie in, like, I'm almost 15 years sober. Like, I really don't ever feel tempted. Like, we were at a party last night, a Halloween party with people we know. There was NA drinks, there was alcoholic drinks. My wife's sober. We would not for a second in either of us have any interest in that drink. But if you're someone that's struggling right now
Yeah.
and you're feeling this sort of underlying sense of unease, that could, that can test people's sobriety. So
Yeah.
there is an intersect there.
On the heels of COVID, which I can't
Right.
even imagine if I was drinking and drugging during COVID, I'd probably be dead. It just I don't know. I have so much respect for people that got sober and stayed sober during COVID because what a shit show. So wait, I want to go back for a quick second,
Yeah.
not to the politics. We've moved on from then, but I noticed something right away when I started listening to your podcast. I'm going to be 54 in December.
As am
Okay,
I.
I know. I got sober March of 2010.
And I'm February 10. That's funny.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I wear dark rimmed glasses.
Yeah, this is like a bromance going on right
Yeah,
now.
and the
And if
best
I
of
if my
all,
beard was longer, it would also be pretty
yeah,
white.
we both have clothes racks in the background.
Yeah, there we go. It's meant to be.
So wait, my brother and his wife, right after September 11th, they moved to Maine, to Portland, Maine. He lives in Falmouth.
That is my hometown.
I
Where my
know.
where my folks still live. Well, my dad, because my mom's in an adjacent town now
We
in
were there
memory
this
care. But
summer. We were in Falmouth this summer. Yep.
where'd you go in Falmouth?
Well, we usually go to Portland, I
Yeah,
guess, if we're just going to
awesome,
walk around.
awesome city.
The Holy Donut. It's one of my favorite
Oh, the
donut
Holy
shops.
Donut. Yeah.
And they have a great record shop there. I always forget what it is, and it's like the cool comic book store there that's on like the second floor of that building. I forget what it's
Not
called,
Bull
but
Moose.
yeah, Bull
Okay, Bull
Moose.
Moose. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is a
I
great
think
record store.
yeah, and then they have like superhero stuff and all that stuff on the other
Yeah,
side or whatever.
it's like a little bit of Newberry Comics, like.
Yes, exactly. But when we go there, they're outdoorsy people, so we go to lakes. Like they have friends that have lake houses, so we go. We do the boating. We do, sometimes we'll go fishing. It's just we're indoorsy, like my family,
You were
and they're
telling me you hunted,
outdoorsy.
though.
Yeah, but that's like
I mean, you can't do that inside. I mean, I guess you
no.
could.
Well, no, I listen. We have a cabin in the woods. I like being outside, a campfire, but I don't like walking. Like stuff like that. Like anything that has to do with moving, like quicker than just getting off the couch. I have terrible knees, a bad back. I'm lazy. I'm old. I just outdoorsy scares me. I always feel
Yeah,
like I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom and have an accident. It's terrifying to do things outside. Anyway.
yeah, but right. So those are some funny, like, there are funny intersects. I was at this party last night and got chatting with this guy I'd never met, and he was from Yarmouth. Because we were exchanging numbers, and he started with 207. I said, well, wait a minute, that's a Maine, because that's the only that's like the
Yeah.
only area code in Maine still, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
207. So then we sort of put it together that, but he was younger than me. But I did once have a job, and I got chatting with these engineers, and like, oh, you should go talk to this guy Paul. He's from Maine too. Well, fucking Paul had graduated with my brother 2 years ahead of
Really?
me. Yeah, I was
That's
like,
crazy.
this small world, it's kind of cool. I mean, I think the intersections are really pretty neat when
Yeah.
you just dig in.
The sober dates and the age was crazy. It's like we're
Yeah,
almost at the same point in life. Unfortunately, you're a punk guy. I'm a metal guy. So
yeah.
I
I
feel like
mean,
we
we don't
almost
have
were
to
there.
fight anymore. Back in
No.
the day,
Yeah. Yeah. I
Maybe we
wanna come
will.
out of this interview, by the way, with, 3 or 4 records that I should get if you wanna introduce me to punk,
Oh,
because I
okay.
I have no idea, but I need to leave with that information.
All right. I'll do my best. So let's make sure we do that.
Okay.
Um, but before that, maybe, can you sort of tell people your sober story? Whatever way is comfortable for you.
Sure. I think, like, my story, it's like, it really is about emotions and feelings, and sort of where that took me. Um, I live with mental health conditions and substance use disorder. I have depression, anxiety. I've lived with it my whole life. I'm on my medication, the whole deal. Um, but when I was young, my parents got divorced. I think I was 9, and my little brother was 5 or 4.5. We're like, 4.5 years apart, whatever it is. And my dad, he didn't like move down the block to a townhouse. He like moved to Connecticut, and we're in Long Island. So, right away it went from just comfortable ish to, lawlessness in the house, and that was the 70s. So we were latchkey kids and all that stuff. And, my mom was working a couple of jobs. All of a sudden, like, I don't want to say we were poor because, we had a roof over our heads, but, we lived in a neighborhood that was a pretty nice neighborhood. And, we were always worried about money, and my mom would let us know that, things could go off the rails any day now. Blaming my dad, like, it was a lot of yelling in the house. And so I kind of shut down when I was a young kid. Um, it was the way that I was able to sort of, I guess, deal with stuff. I was outgoing and, like to be like the center of attention, funny guy, but I wasn't talking to anybody about anything more than surface. Um, and then, that uncomfortability just got worse and worse and worse until I guess I found, drinking. And I remember drinking at first was like, I was a little nervous to do it. I was like 13, and we would get like we'd take like a thermos, and we'd like break into my buddy's stepdad's shed, and we'd get like, there'd be like, 10 different bottles of alcohol. So we'd pour a little bit of every type of bottle into the thermos and then like shake it up. And then we'd be, passing out on lawns, peeing on people's lawns, just walking the town the entire night. It was bad right from the beginning. But I felt like I had like something I can do and feel like not out of place, because everybody was just drinking. So if I was good at that, I was able to hang out and I felt comfortable. The stress went away, and it just kind of like escalated. I didn't do any drugs until my second half of my senior year in high school. I smoked weed for the first time because I wrestled in high school. So I was always like, anybody that smokes or does drugs is a dirtbag, you know? Like,
Yeah.
there's no way. I mean, I drink a lot, but there's no way I'm doing drugs and smoking. There's just no way that's ever going to happen. And I remember I had a girlfriend my senior year, and that second half of my senior year was just one big brownout. Like, every picture that you see of me in the yearbook, I have sunglasses on inside because I would go to my girlfriend's house during lunch and I'd steal beers from her, from her dad from the refrigerator. And by the time I got back to school in the afternoon, I was just drunk the entire afternoon in school. And, it was just, that was the beginning of just starting not to care a little bit, like just not really caring what I'm doing to my body. Um, and, I went through that phase where, I don't know if you went through this phase, but just writing poetry, listening to The Cure with the red light on, feeling bad for yourself, like that self pity kind of thing
Yeah,
going
this
on.
this self-pity was big for me with the depression and anxiety for sure.
Hmm.
Everybody else's fault. Side note, there is a new Cure album that just came out, which is quite excellent. Their first one in 16 years. But yeah, it was like this little voice on your shoulder. And I've told this before. I remember feeling like depression and anxiety were so reliable.
Yeah.
They will fucking always be there for you if you let
Yep.
them. You
Yeah.
know, they're like, we got you. We'll just pull you down into the muck and the mire, but we're there for you, baby. Like, we got you. Like, and
Yeah.
figuring that out was like, oh, right. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
to fight against that.
But we don't have the tools to do that when we're like teenagers, you know, nor do we understand what it is. Like, I wasn't writing, you know, depressed poetry, listening to The Cure in my basement, thinking like I have depression. I was just, you know, drinking whatever Bartles and James or beer and thinking like, you know, woe is me, the world is against me, let me write about it. I didn't for a second think maybe I had depression. And I didn't know that my mom had depression, my mom's mom had depression, my mom's dad had depression. Like, I had no clue, you know. um and then got to college, and I don't know about how it worked for you, but you know, high school was good. You know, I had a lot of friends, and I never had a problem sort of like talking to people or anything like that. Um, but it was generally uncomfortable, I think, in like a high school sort of way. I just never felt like I couldn't wait to just get out and start over. And you know, when you go to college, you have that thing where you could be like, wait, I can make a first impression again for the
Right.
first time, you know? And you can kind of like write that narrative of who you want to be going to, and I did. Like, I was, you know, I had never, I don't think, had a fight in my entire life before I went to college. And I got to college and I was like fighting in bars every night. I was just doing, I was doing every drug that somebody handed to me. I was just, I turned into like, it was like slow suicide, you know? Like, I didn't want to kill myself, but if you put it in front of me, I would do it, or I would do stupid. I would like jump out windows. I would, you know, punch holes in windows. I would just, you know, the biggest guy in the bar, and I'd never win a fight, but it was like that just wasn't me. But that's kind of who I wanted people to think that I was,
Right.
you know? And you know, the drinking just got terrible. It was just blackout. I was a blackout drinker right from the beginning, you know? And the thing that really sort of got my story going in a different direction was I busted my knee playing soccer my junior year, I want to say, of college. And I went to college in Oneonta. All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, went to
The
college in
Soccer Hall
Oneonta.
of Fame used to be there. Now it's
I
closed.
Is it really? It did
Yeah.
used to be there.
Yeah, but
That's funny
the
that you know that.
excellent fields are still there. I've
Yeah.
been there in recent memory, like
Okay.
this over the summer for soccer.
So I busted my knee playing soccer, and I had to have surgery. Mind you, I found my own surgeon. Um, I scheduled my own surgery. My parents never came to visit me or see how I was doing, and the doctor prescribed 3 months of hydrocodone with refills. Okay, so
Old
for an
school back in
alcoholic,
the day. Have some
uh-huh.
drugs.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like for an alcoholic who has depression and anxiety, now all of a sudden has opioids and a like a supply, you know,
Right. And
like,
you can't get off the couch.
oh God, no. And I'm trapped. Like, I had my little machine that goes back and forth, and that's it. And I was in a fraternity, so pledges were, you know, would bring me stuff or whatever it was. And it just got nasty from there, you know, and then it was just like coke and, you know, mushrooms, stuff that I just never really thought that I would do, because I was actually scared of doing hard stuff. I just wasn't scared to do anything anymore. Nothing, you know? And met my wife, who we met on Halloween at a Halloween party. She was in a sorority, and I'm 2 years older, but at the time I had a mohawk, and it was a Halloween party. So my ex girlfriend did my makeup to look like King Diamond. You know King Diamond from Merciful Fate, right?
Yeah.
So I had King Diamond makeup and a mohawk and a cast on my hand because I had just had surgery from being in a fight. I had a metal plate in my hand. I had surgery like a week before, and she didn't drink, didn't smoke, and she looked exactly like Winnie Cooper from the Wonder Years. So took her hostage immediately, you know, and yeah, man, it was like it was a very like I don't want to say it was a slow progression, because again, I was a blackout drinker right away, but I think the emotion of it and just the whole not caring just got worse and worse and worse. And the sad part is, my drinking and drugging got worse and the not caring got worse the richer my life got. The more full my life got, the less I cared about being here, um, and then it got to we got married, and you know there's a book Living Sober. It's
Yes.
an AA book, Living Sober. There's a part in the book, it's called I think it's called the If Onlys, right? And it's like, if only I had a vacation coming up, I wouldn't drink. If only, I had a house, I wouldn't drink. If only I got a raise, I wouldn't drink. If only I had a kid, I wouldn't drink. So my life just became like a whole series of if onlys, you know? Um, and, the business I was in also was a very, it was a party business. It was, I wasn't like on the box. I wasn't animating things or doing that. I was taking people out and trying to get business. So it was a lot of dinners and a lot of like late nights out, and, drugs were a thing. That's like in the office, you can do coke and smoke weed in the office and nobody gave a shit. Um, and, we installed beer taps at my office. I convinced my partner to install beer taps. It just got really bad. And, my kids, we had two kids, towards the end. I'm just going to skip to the end, but we had two kids towards the end, and they were, 7 and 3. My daughters were 7 and 3, and my job was like to get the kids ready in the morning. So my wife's a teacher, so she's out the door by 6:30.
Right.
So, my job is to like get the kids ready in the morning and just like do the thing. And there were just like the nights of, the 18 missed phone calls, right? The falling asleep on the couch at the office and not coming home and they don't know where I am. Um, you know, Waking up out of a blackout on the Penn Station bathroom floor, like not knowing where my
That gets
car
my
is.
my germophobia going.
Oh, it didn't matter,
Yeah.
and it just got so bad. And, I just remember, you know, for me, I had I think I got sober after like 3 bottoms, you know what I mean? Like, I had a bottom that should have been the bottom, but then I had to have another one, and then my last drink was like a half a beer at a Rangers game, and I'm like, "What am I doing?" And that was it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I remember the morning that I must have come home at like 5 in the morning, and I was still drunk, and I didn't know where my car was, and my wife just came into the bedroom. She was about to leave, and kids are like, going nuts, and they're going to be late for school. And she's like, "You're on your own. Like, you're done." And I just remember looking at her, and anybody that's been married can probably, they know that look that your wife gives you when you're just fucking shit up,
The
you know?
one you don't want to fucking get, that look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's always been like, you didn't do the dishes or you didn't do this, and there's a look. But I just remember thinking, holy shit, that's like, this is like a look that I've never seen before, and it was like, you're pathetic, you know?
Yeah.
And and that was one of the worst days of my life, because it was just a series of events, like, trying to get my kids to school that morning, not having a car, and I just like all these things. It was just the worst day. And I just remember, calling in sick. I owned the company. I would call in sick to work, and I remember calling my brother. I was like, I think I have a problem, with drinking. He's like, no shit. And my brother had been in Al-Anon for years at that point, because his wife's an alcoholic, and now my brother is sober. He's an alcoholic too. But like, again, for me, it was my family. Like, my bottom was my family. Because my drinking, it could have gotten worse and worse and worse, and the drugs worse and worse and worse, and the painkillers and this, like, but it was really the perspective shift for me. Like, my disease of alcoholism is like a disease of perspective, right? And when I was drinking, I had one perspective, and now I'm sober and I have a different perspective. And that bottom was like just the shift of perspective. And I guess that's like the gift of desperation or a moment of clarity or whatever. But that shift in perspective was, it was just it just changed my life. And And then I ran off. I hit recovery like I hit alcohol and drugs. I was just on fire. It's not that it wasn't easy, but I never look back. Never look back.
Yeah, and and I didn't do 12 step. My wife does 12 step, and we were both sober when we met, but I remember the night where I was like, my first marriage was falling apart, and I was like, I gotta, for me it was 2 glasses of wine became 3. It was like the medicine to kind of take the edge off the anxiety and the depression and the migraines and all the things. And the migraines were really linked in a lot of ways to mental health. Like, I still get them, but not 20 a
Yeah.
month. It was, the relationship is so strong there when you dig into it. But that moment of like, and I sort of, the spiritual side of me is like, my grandmother came down and was like, "What are you doing?"
Mm.
Like, that direction is bad. You need to
Yeah.
turn around. And I just turned around. Like, I just was like, I can't, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And that is the reason. And it's funny, I was talking to my wife, we're talking about my podcast, and I was saying, I think like the mission is to share the stories,
Hmm.
because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And like,
Yeah.
hearing people's stories and them tell the stories helps people know that the light's there. It might be far and dim, right? Like, you've listened to some episodes, there's some people where you're like, damn, like they did that through just some, like, their addictions and like suicide of family members, and like, I'm not saying it's easy, but it it's you can do it, and your
Yeah.
life can be so rich and fulfilled.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be married to my wife now if we weren't both sober.
Right.
It's so fundamental to our relationship, and the intentionality and trust that's like so important in any
Yeah.
relationship with your kids or your spouse or your friends or whatever. We're hanging with friends this afternoon. We're sort of talking about, helping kids understand accountability. And I've always said it's so easy to lose like your good reputation,
Right.
or if people view you as not being honest, right? It's so easy to lose that good reputation, and it is so hard to build it back. Because
Yeah.
once somebody views you as like not trustworthy, and it is a relational thing to sobriety, right? Because like, okay, I got to get sober, but now I got to rebuild
Yeah.
everything, and
Yeah.
which is hard.
Yeah.
The apologizing to people and like doing the work. Like, I did a lot of therapy, like digging into like the reasons behind my substance use disorder.
Yeah. The whole co-occurrence thing, with because not every person that lives with mental health conditions has substance use disorder. But I haven't met many people with substance use disorder that don't have some sort of mental health condition, right? So those two together can be really, really deadly and confusing, and they fuel each other, And the problem is, if you have depression and anxiety, you really need to do work to get better. Medication helps people too, but you need to do work to get better, whether it's meditation or therapy. It doesn't make a difference. But if you're drinking and you're drugging, you're not growing at all, because you're not handling things. You're not looking at things and trying to solve the problems, because you just can't. You don't have the emotional tools or the emotional capacity, because you're numb. And I remember when I hit that bottom, and I had it. My wife and I were in marriage counseling at the time, and we were like, it was not good. Like we
Marriage
were
counseling is not fun.
No, like bacon in a frying pan.
Oh my
It's not.
God. It is
And take
not.
separate cars. Take separate cars is my advice to anybody that has marriage counseling.
But also try and do it, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we're going to marriage counseling and it's not working, right? Because no one's getting honest and it's just we're just it's not I'm still drinking, you know? Like how are we going to solve anything if I can't get my shit together? It wasn't fair, right? And I remember I said to my wife, I go, "Do you mind if I go and see our counselor alone this time?" And she was like, "Sure." And I remember I went to see her and I said to her, I said, I can't stop drinking, I can't stop doing drugs, and I want to fucking kill myself. Like I just I don't know what to do anymore." And she was like, "It sounds like you've been self-medicating for a really long time. I want you to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to refer you to a psychiatrist because I want you to get looked at because you might have depression. And I want you to try to go to an AA meeting." And I was like, "Okay." Like the next day, I went to an AA meeting. Um, and, that week I went to a psychiatrist and, he put me on first like Lamictal for like mood swings and whatnot. And that's when I stopped drinking. It's my first AA meeting. I was done, I just stopped drinking forever. But, uh, but it wasn't until I started the medication that I was able to sort of like, for me, medication, I'm like, it just gives me a chance to have a clean slate when the sun rises, you know, and
Yeah.
then I could fuck shit up along the way. But, if I'm not on the meds, like, I don't know if I'm going to have that clean slate. I can have a good day, a bad day. I have no idea. But at least with the meds, I know I'm doing something to sort of get myself, on that beam. But I couldn't have done one without the other, because I've been into therapy as a child of divorce. Like I was going to therapy when I was like 9 years old. Like I was bringing my newts to my therapist, showing her like I wouldn't, she's going on walks with me. I wouldn't talk to her, but it wasn't until I got sober that I finally started getting honest with a therapist and realized that my problem was more than just my drinking, and it's been a roller coaster, you know, meds or no meds. I've been on meds since I got sober, and prescriptions, they change because things stop working or you need to increase
Yeah.
this dose and I remember I almost lost my mind at 5 years sober. I didn't know what was going on. I was losing my fucking mind. And I didn't know what to do. And my meds were just not working anymore. And I thought I was going crazy at 5 years sober, and it took a while to get back on the beam. I didn't want to drink, but that feeling was coming back again. Like, I hate myself and why can't I function and why can't you do this and what's wrong with you? Um, but again, I trust my doctor. They mix the medication a little bit. I add this, take away that, and I was fine again, But just being sober, as you said, depression is sneaky, anxiety is sneaky. You never know when it's going to be there, and people that don't have it don't understand. Like, why can't you just get out of bed? Just shake it off. It's like, no, I can't describe that feeling of not wanting to get out of bed, and it's just you can't do anything about it. It's fucking horrible,
Well, right, because if you broke your leg, it's this weird way that mental health is somehow viewed as not medical, right? In this country, like if someone breaks their hip, right, they go to the hospital, they have surgery, they go to rehab, and everyone's like, "That cool, you're in rehab, right? For you broke your hip." Well, mental health is not. It's not different than that, you know.
No.
And I mean, I always say with like maintaining sobriety and also like being in touch with your own mental health beyond therapy, it's just constant vigilance
Yeah.
and self-reflection and checking in and having people you trust who call you on your shit.
Yeah.
Like that was the good thing about my therapist is I'd go in and I'd try and joke around. She's like, cut that out. We're not like,
Yeah.
like a good, my theory of a good therapist is they call you on your shit and
Yeah.
they push you, like I don't need to be like, oh, your feelings. No, I needed to be like pushed on my crap and
Right.
pushed on like, no, the universe isn't like against me. I'm making decisions. I mean, I have health issues that are impacting, but I'm also making decisions
Right.
that are putting people in the position. And I'm just using, oh, the world is against me as an excuse to
Right.
not like get better. And I also had this. moment. It was after I was sober, but like when my first marriage ended, of like the grass is always greener. Like we were talking about, man, like, oh, I don't want to be in the Finger Lakes. Well, my kids are here. Like, I'm not going anywhere, right?
Right.
Like, I would never not be where my kids are. Like now the older ones they're doing their thing. That's what's supposed to happen. So, but that notion of like the next thing is always going to be the right thing. It's a little
Right.
bit of those, the if only thing, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
if only I lived in Maine, or if only I had a different job, or if only you can get so stuck on that stuff. Outside of like substance abuse or anything, I think that's such just a thing that people do.
Yeah.
That is an excuse to kind of hold them back, or they don't try because they're like afraid of failure. I'm like, just you can fail. It's like okay. You can make
Well,
mistakes. It's like, okay.
fear is a thing, like, especially because all eyes are on everyone 24/7 with social media. I think people are just afraid, like they're afraid to fail because everybody's going to see it, um fear is huge. Like, switching careers it took me 15, 20 years to make a decision. And I had almost 13 years sober when I decided I was going to switch careers, and that's a long time to be unhappy in your career and sober. It's like,
Right.
this is not what I got sober for, to be unhappy. And you know work is like, work can be a really big part of your life and take out a big chunk of your time, especially if you're commuting 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it was making my home life miserable too. And again, my wife knew it. I wasn't shy. We talked about it all the time. She knew I was miserable. And so when I was finally like, I'm done, she was just, the fear was money, right?
Yeah.
It was,
100%.
yeah, the fear was money. And somebody once told me fear always boils down to two things: fear of not getting what you want, and fear of losing what you have. Okay. So I had a fear of losing what I had, right? I owned a company. I had, we have a house, we have the cars, all that stuff. Everything's fine. We're comfortable. And fear of not getting what I want. Like, I have no transferable skills. I'm 50 years old. Nobody's going to hire me. I was successful here, but now I'm going to be like like an intern or something. Like, I'm going to start at the bottom. Like, how am I going to do this? And I just literally needed my wife to say, just do it. We're going to be fine. It's okay. Like, we'll figure it out. And, that was it was such a gift to have a person that was supportive in that way, because my kids were like, what are you doing? Like, my oldest is like, I don't want to lose my bougie lifestyle. It's like, she's worried. They're worried. Are we going to be poor? We're going to be, I was like, we'll figure it out. And, let me tell you something. I work for a not for profit, right? So nobody's getting rich in not for profit.
Right.
People that are working for not for profit generally are there because they want to be there. They're not doing it because for the money. And I've never been happier in my entire life. It's literally the first time in my life that the pistons are all firing. There was always some spoke was broken on the wheel. Like, and it was never like, oh, why can't everything just be good at once? Never. And I just feel so lucky, and content. And the work that I do, I love going to work on Monday. Like, I love it. Like, I want to be at work. That's never happened to me. And I'm starting to be like, my creativity, my personal creativity is starting to now intersect with my passion for what I do, which has never ever ever happened. So it's just it's still a new feeling for me to be really pumped about work and wanting to talk about it and wanting to just do. And it's a whole different life now, and the money is just like whatever. In a way
Good
it's
thing
better I
teachers
was
get
older.
paid so much.
Well, listen, let me tell you, my wife's been teaching for
Yeah.
almost 30 years, so it's the pension.
The
I can't
pension. I
I can
know.
never leave. I can never leave. She's got me. She's got me. Vasectomy or no, she has me.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
the pension is real. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
remember when everybody had pensions? I mean,
yeah,
people who are younger don't even they're like, "What's a pension?"
yeah. And they read the newspaper, and your wife made you dinner, and you rode the
Yeah.
bus.
I mean, I do most of the cooking in my house, but yeah, it's yeah, but work is such an interesting intersect, right? It is a gift to, and I think for a long time I was always fighting to try and find that alignment. I mean, I find a lot of that alignment doing this like podcast fulfills a lot of that for me.
Yeah,
But I get it. Like, I mean, I like my job. I work at a great place. We do like good architecture work that like builds hospitals and affordable housing. Like it's good stuff. We fucking built the Dalai Lama's headquarters in Ithaca, New York, in
that's
the
nuts.
Western hemisphere. It's nuts. We're like, this
Yeah,
is nuts. It's incredible. It's beautiful. But it's a lot of your time, right?
yeah,
And if you're commuting 8 hours or 2 hours a day, right? That's like a lot of time when you think about kids and sports and music or whatever they're doing. Yeah, it's nice to like be at home.
yeah, yeah. I love it. I work 10 minutes from the office, so I get out of bed, like 8 o'clock. Take my time. I get to work at 9:30. I'm like the first one in the office, and unless I have an event at night or something, I'm out by 5 o'clock. I never thought that that could happen. But and you said something just a second ago about how the podcast like fills that sort of bucket for you. Um,
Yeah.
because I've been through a lot of that stuff, which is why now it's just sort of like this crazy thing that like everything is coming together. I've always liked writing, like I've always been a writer. And I had a dad blog from 2008 to 2016. I wrote a dad blog, and it was mommy blog. I don't know if like remember the mommy blog phase when like
Yeah.
mommy bloggers were exploding. Every mom, every stay-at-home mom was writing a blog, and it became like a business. And I was one of the first dad bloggers. So a lot of the mommy bloggers like took me under their wing, and it became like it was a really good blog. It was popular. Um, and I loved it. I loved it, but I wasn't sober for most of it.
Yeah.
Right. So the first couple of years, I was writing, and as a dad blogger, I was kind of like portraying myself to be this amazing dad, and like this everything was great and funny, but I hated myself. And it was like I was writing about the person that I wanted people to think that I was, and not the person that I was. And then I got sober, and I wrote for a few more years or whatever, but I had to stop because I didn't want to hear myself talk anymore. When I
Yeah.
was sober, I was like, I don't want to talk about me anymore. Like it didn't feel right. So I stopped writing for God, I don't know, like, almost 10 years. I just wasn't writing, and it took, a big part of who I was creatively, like that outlet, and it just kind of went away, and I didn't know what else to do. And then during COVID, I started streaming. I built this studio here, and started streaming on Twitch. Like I didn't even know what Twitch was, but I started. I got an Xbox when COVID started, and I said I'm going to play more video games. And I started playing this hunting game. And one of my friend's kids saw me playing the hunting game one time. We were away on vacation. Like it was the first time during COVID, like we actually went away again. Went to like a beach house, just all of us, and that was it. And he was like, "This game is awesome. You should stream this on Twitch." And I was like, "I don't know what Twitch is." And like a good alcoholic, I did research and I had a stream running and ready to go,
Right.
like in like 3 days. And for about 4 years, I did the streaming thing, and it was amazing. I love it. I still love it. I've made so many friends from all over the world streaming. But now doing the work I do, I've been inspired again to write. And I'm writing about mental health and substance use disorder. And it's become like this advocacy thing that has really given me a purpose. And I've never been more inspired in my life to write. Like I write so much now. um that it's crazy. That's how I found out about you. Elise from Sober Curator told me about you, and I
Yeah,
started listening
which
to the
is a
podcast.
great, like, if people haven't checked out Sober Curator,
It's awesome.
like, you totally should. But you have a blog again now,
Yeah.
Sober Not Subtle.
Yes.
And
So
so people can find some of your stuff there.
yes, and that's it. The sober not subtle thing is actually it's new. The name is new, and the look is new, and the concept is new. But I had a blog that I've been writing for about a year and a half. Like when I started, working in the field, I started writing again, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to write about this, and I'm going to be open about it, because I can finally write about my truth. And I made this blog called "If It Hurts, It Helps." Okay, so and the meaning behind that is like the most fucked up shit that we go through, when we're trying to get sober, all the really dark places, I think usually becomes our greatest assets in recovery, our experiences and our sober references now, um, so I named the blog "If It Hurts, It Helps," and wrote it for about a year and was loving it. But I was like, wow, this is kind of like, it's kind of depressing. If it hurts, it helps. And it's like, nobody can identify with it unless they're like an alcoholic, it seems like. And I just wanted to do something more. And so I started writing for the Sober Curator, and it just got me being around all those writers and being around Elise just started making me like think, what, like, how can I do more? So I decided to change the name to Sober Not Subtle and rebrand it and make it look like a little bit more empowering and positive and bright, and not so dark. And I've turned it from just me writing to a community, right? So I have guest contributors. So I mean, the hope is that I'm writing way less and other people are sharing
Right.
their stories more. Um, and it became not just a blog; it's a website now. It has a resource page. It has a wellness page. I just added a podcast page for recommendations, and I put your podcast is on there.
Oh,
I
thank
just
you.
added that page. Yeah. Um, it's just I'm trying to create a community, and I love the sober not subtle idea of just be who you are, be proud of it, be loud about it, and help fight stigma. It's really about fighting stigma and creating awareness. And I have a merch shop on there, and all the profits go to charity. So it's starting to like really like it's starting to like actually do well. And I'm so happy, and I feel so good about it, about this community, and about just talking about mental health and substance use disorder and not being shy about it. Like I never doxed myself once when I was before I got into this field. Like I never put like the chip on Facebook and saying, I got 10 years. I never, if somebody asked me, why don't you drink? I'm more than happy to tell them. People knew I didn't drink anymore, but I never
Right.
talked about AA or anything like that. But I'm telling you, I like scream it from the roof. That's all I post about on LinkedIn now. I'm like, that's all I do. And the website is just hopefully, a platform to do something way bigger than just writing about it,
Yeah,
want to be a movement.
it's that recover out loud thing. Also, LinkedIn is not like, I really built Sober Dad Crew a lot on Instagram.
Mm. That's hard. How?
It is hard. And I just started doing it, you know, and tagging things. And it's been incremental. I do my best. I got, I the rule was like, if family comes first, I
Yeah.
can't stress myself out. Like, I'm going to do my best. You know, I wish I had a day a week to like record and edit and put, like, do all the things in a day, but I don't. So I like, I'm going to record this and I'll plug away at editing it,
Yeah.
and I do my best. But LinkedIn lately has gotten really interesting.
Oh,
And
love LinkedIn.
like, I didn't used to really give a shit about LinkedIn. I was on there as a professional thing, but it has been interesting for the traction around like sobriety and recovery, to the
Hmm.
point where I had someone at a firm that my company works with just, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. And this person, like, they're not really publicly out, so I'm just not being cagey, but they were like, "That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I'm this many years sober. Thank you for being public." But I think the first time I put it on LinkedIn was like my 12th sober anniversary.
Right.
And it was in the middle of the process of applying for the job I have now. I mean, I think I've told this story on here before. And I had this moment of like, oh shit, like what if they see that and don't hire me? And then I was like, well, fuck it. If they see that and don't hire me, I don't want to work there.
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
hard because it was like more money. Like,
Yeah.
and so, those kind of struggles of push and pull of like, your honesty and I'll call it capitalism,
Yeah.
it is hard, but the more of us who are public about it, I think the better it is. Like I feel like I'm a better employee, a better partner, all this stuff because I've struggled and found my way through it.
Yeah. The good thing that's happened about going public with it and stuff. And I've been a LinkedIn user since day one. Like I've always loved LinkedIn, especially in business. Like the amount of people I've hired from LinkedIn, and I try to be a thought leader in whatever I do on LinkedIn. Like I'll take link if all other social media just died and went away tomorrow and LinkedIn was left, I'd be totally fine. I'd actually be happy if it was just LinkedIn. But I feel like if you can build your personal brand, through social media like LinkedIn, then everything else follows. Like and that's kind of like I finally feel like my transferable skills that I didn't know I even had. I'm actually becoming that person that I was in business, but like for good and not for evil. Like just networking. Like I'm always networking with people in the field because I'm interested in talking to them, and I have no motive of like making it to the top and being like rich and a CEO, and it's just not like that anymore. It's I genuinely want to create the awareness around this stuff. um Instagram is hard though. I don't even know how you would even, especially for a podcast, like you can hardly do anything on Instagram. We got to get you LinkedIn like big time. Like you need to be on LinkedIn and you need to work it,
Yeah, I mean,
Steve.
I'm there and it has grown. I mean, I still do both. I do like a little bit on Facebook, but and like Threads just cuz I gave up on Twitter. I couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
The politic I just couldn't. I mean, LinkedIn or Instagram it's just been kind of incremental and people liking and sharing. But LinkedIn lately has been the most growth, but I think now like I don't have to always seek out guests as much. There's
Yeah.
been more referrals or more people kind of reaching out to me, which has been great. I mean, people have been super generous about saying yes. Like
Yeah.
there was a moment, I interviewed Art Alexakis from Everclear as like, I'm just going to talk to famous people.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, I'm going to post that and it's going to blow up.
Yeah.
And it didn't
Yeah.
because I mean, cool guy, great interview, generous to like take his time and all that, but he didn't put it out on his feeds. But like what I call sort of just regular dads, like you and me and Tristan and all these other people, like who are willing to share their stories, that's actually where that incremental growth has really come from because they're like proud to share their story and they put it out onto their networks, and that's that like we're all like telling our truth and we're recovering out loud and being like, and not everybody's in recovery. Like I've talked to people who are just sober because those
Yeah.
are I'm trying to cover the range.
Yeah.
You got the straight edge punks who've like never had a drink, you know but like drilling down into why is also interesting.
Right. Yeah, I love your podcast, and it's my favorite podcast now. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass because I'm not a huge podcast guy. Like I listen to Smartless and Bad Friends, and I was a This American Life guy when like that was like
Oh,
seemed like
that
the
was
only
great.
podcast ever.
Yeah.
It was when crime was like the thing. But the reason why I love this podcast, and I'm so happy that I found it, that at least turned me on to it, is because I don't have to be in the mood for it, right? So like if I put on Smartless, great podcast, but sometimes I'm just not in the mood to listen to those guys banter, you know? I'm not in the mood to hear something funny, or I'm not in the mood to hear something, and it's just like, it's like looking at a CD rack, you know, an old just
Yeah.
trying to decide which CD out of the 1,000 you're going to listen to, and you can't make up your mind. But I know that if I put your podcast on, there's going to be somebody there that's talking about the stuff that relates to me. I might not be interested in all of it, but it's going to be a dad. It's going to be a dad who's not drinking, you know, and it's going to, the stories are the stories that are going to resonate with me. And I've never listened to an episode that I didn't get something out of it. You know, it's just one of those things. I could just put it on, and I know it's just going to be, it's not anything that I would normally have thought that I would have the opportunity to listen to, a sober dad podcast, you know. It's great. I love it. It's actually like my favorite thing, my favorite podcast.
Well, and I appreciate that. And the sort of origin too is like me saying to my wife, like, there's all this like sober mom stuff kind of out there, and
Mhm.
like really like built a ton of momentum. And, I'm not one who's interested in like gender rigidity, right? Like, I think that's all a spectrum and everything. But for the sort of sake of all this, mom, dad, the voice of the dad, and like dads who want to be like really active, involved parents. Like, I take being a dad fucking serious,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's the thing that all the things circle around. It's the
Yeah.
reason like I have the job I have, you know, and it just is the foundational way I'm defined. And I didn't hear that out there necessarily in a broad dad way, even beyond like sobriety, right? Like
Right.
it just, or dad mental health, like all that stuff with dudes is all the shit that people don't talk about. And I
Right.
was like, I think I just want to try this thing and put it out there, and like, your guest 50, which kind of fucking blows my mind. I've just been like I know, number
I'm
50,
the
man,
50, man.
you're the 50,
I'll,
but
I'll
just
always remember this day.
it always like it connects to sort of my philosophy, which is like get up every day, try and be a little bit better,
Yeah.
lean forward, take a step forward, or what my wife will say is like do the next right thing,
Mhm.
and then you do the next right thing. And if
Yeah.
you like do that, like not just in sobriety, those are good tools for sobriety, but those are just good tools for life in your personal relationships, in your work, is like have a high level of integrity, be humble,
Yeah.
like work hard, like you're going to make mistakes, apologize for the mistake, figure out how not to do it again, and move on.
Yeah. And normalizing all this stuff is really important. You know how, like, remember when the only professional athlete that had tattoos was Dennis Rodman?
Yeah.
Remember that?
I,
And it was
I
like,
lived in
ugh.
Chicago then.
Okay.
And
Yeah. So
I used to take, this is sort of a side note, I used to take the bus or the train from work, and I'm on the bus, and it was so that those were the years,
yeah.
right? Rodman, Jordan, and all the people were like, bus driver, you gotta like hurry up. The game's gonna start. And that
Yep.
fucking bus was like, it was terrifying. It was like,
Yeah.
we're just gonna die and not see this Bulls game on television because this bus is careening through the streets, right? But yeah, Dennis Rodman was like the only athlete with tattoos.
Yeah, and thank God, right? Because now
Yeah,
it's like people, but it's the same. I guess what I'm saying is it's the same thing with mental health and substance use disorder, right? Like it used to be just like the rock stars, you know, and movie stars, you know, overdosing on heroin. That was kind of like the only time you'd hear about in the spotlight, right? And now, you know, everybody's sort of like coming out and talking about their story and doing podcasts and writing blogs or whatever it is. And you know, the more we can normalize it, the more people are just going to keep talking about it. And hopefully, like, you know, our kids, it'll just be something that's normal to talk about, you know. And
yeah,
it's, hey, how can I help you? You know, it's just, guys have it rough, man. No, we're taught not to talk about that shit, and I'm just so happy that I'm sober, because if I wasn't sober, I wouldn't have, like I said, the emotional tools to even, you know, process it, let alone talk about it, you know. And I love it. I love being able to talk about it. So many people have DM'd me from my old business, my old industry, saying, "Hey, my brother is so and so," or "Hey, I've been sober for 13 years," or
Yeah.
"Hey," like people I never would have even known were sober, and I
Y-
love it.
Yeah, and one of the owners of the company I work for, he's like, "Oh yeah, like my brother's, sober." And it is really good to have those stories out there. And I think like learning to tell your personal truth, like we always say in our family, we'll talk about everything.
Yeah.
Like there is sort of nothing that's not on the table to talk about. Like if a kid wants to understand something, we're going to figure out how to talk to them about it. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
the way you talk to the 8-year-old is different than the 17-year-old,
Yeah.
but it is all on the table
Yeah, that's good.
because kids need to know. I mean, I remember with the now 21-year-old at one point being like, "Oh, you don't know like what meth is, right? You don't know. You need to understand what these things are
Yeah.
so that if it's presented to you, you understand what this is, or sex or whatever like the topic is. Like you cannot shelter kids from like
Yeah.
information. I mean, I think a lot of people do, and you definitely like see it when you see other kids. And my kids are like they've recognized, oh, like other families don't operate the way we do,
No.
you know.
No.
So
Yeah.
when they, this weird example when all like the Puff Daddy shit was going down, like kids had questions and we
Yeah.
talked about it.
Right.
Why baby oil? We're gonna fucking talk about that.
Wait, why baby oil?
We talked about it.
Talk about it with me. I don't even know what's going on with that. I'm so like out of touch with that
I
shit.
mean, it's just they like when they searched his home, I guess they found like 1,000 bottles of baby oil.
Yeah.
And that's a
It's
lot of baby
just
oil.
wants smooth skin. I
Right.
the thing about that is I think you being sober and your wife being sober, you're exposed to so much more. I don't want to say honesty, but like, you know, you're around people that have clarity of mind and they're talking about things that people won't normally talk about. So I feel like being sober parents, not every household is going to be like that, but being sober parents, I feel like has a lot to do with it. Like my kids know, like they know I'm a fucking drug addict and
Yeah,
an
they remember.
alcoholic, you know?
They remember.
Yeah, and but they know, like they kid around about it too. They're like, you know, they'll see something on TV and somebody doing coke and be like, "Dad, you did coke, right?" And I'd be like, like, but they're not afraid to like talk about it. Their friends know I'm sober, and I feel like it's good. Like I always used to tell my daughters when they were younger, I said, "You don't have to tell me everything, but I want you to feel like you can tell me anything." you know
Yeah.
so and that was always like the way that it was. Even when I was drinking, I was always like, I was very like, wanted to make sure that my kids knew that they can talk to me, and we have one kid that if she has a hemorrhoid, we know it, and then the other kid, barely says a word because she's
Right.
just wants us out of her room, like it's the stages. But oh, I wanted to say, I also, and I got to get you on this. We at work, I'm able to facilitate different types of meetings and stuff. And when I was first getting sober and my kids were young, I was going to AA meetings every day. And my kids were starting to ask like, "Where's dad going on at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night when he used to read me a story, and
Yeah.
where's daddy going on 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning when he's usually making pancakes?" And I did not know what to say. Like I was going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to AA because I'm fucking fucked up."
Yeah.
Like I couldn't say that to my 3-year-old and my 7-year-old. So a guy came up to me in a meeting. He must have heard me share, and he said, "Why don't you tell your kids that you're going to daddy meetings to become a better dad?" And that's all they really need
Yeah.
to know. And it's true.
It's true.
So I
Yeah.
was like, "Holy shit." So I started telling my kids that I was going to daddy meetings. So it became like a thing in the house. Like, "Are you going to a daddy meeting today? Like, don't you usually go to a daddy meeting now? I think mommy should go to mommy meetings." Like it was starting not
You
good.
talk to mommy about that,
Yeah.
not me.
So 15 years later, when I had an opportunity to facilitate a group, I asked if I could do a dad meeting. So we actually have like a non-denominational dad recovery discussion group. So, it's not AA, it's not 12
Yeah,
step,
no,
it's not
that'd be
anything.
awesome.
Yeah, so it's Zoom and it's in person, but it's like a nice little solid group of guys. We talk a lot about relationships. We talk a lot about our kids. Some kids are grown and out of the house. Some guys haven't talked to their kids in 20 years. They're trying to work through that, and some guys had young kids, but that's like been such a nice full circle thing. Is doing like a real live daddy meeting now, and I love it. It's like one of my favorite days of the week.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and it's a good way to frame it up for kids because it is hard sometimes to explain addiction, right? Like adults don't understand it necessarily, so then you're trying to like explain it to a kid, which is,
Yeah,
really challenging.
yeah. Can you talk to me about music, please?
Yeah. Also, just before that, what was your first tattoo?
Oh, okay. So my first tattoo is no longer there. My first tattoo used to be under here somewhere. Okay. So I thought I was like 29. All right. I was late.
Older.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was older.
I was also another intersect. I think my first tattoo I was 28.
Okay. Well, I'm Jew. I wasn't Jewish. I am Jewish, right? I'm Jewish and third generation Holocaust survivor. So my grandparents were in the concentration camps, right? And there's this fallacy that if you're Jewish, you can't get a tattoo because you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Okay? Which is complete bullshit.
I've heard that myth. Thank you for
It's
busting the myth.
it is busted. And so when I was thinking about getting my first tattoo, I called the cemetery where my family has plots and I asked them if I could be buried there. And they said, absolutely. I got in touch with my grandma's rabbi. Okay. And I met with him and I asked him, and he lifted up his hair and he had a yin yang tattoo on the back of his neck.
That's
And
amazing.
I was like, all right. So I got a tattoo of, like this demon. I was like, I want like the silhouette of a demon, right? And I was living in Queens at the time, and I was like, just went to the first tattoo place that I saw, and it just wound up being like just a black, like a black blob, like with like nails. And oh god, and then I wound up getting my kids' names above and below it,
Hmm.
but it was
Above
again
the
not
the demon,
yeah
well
above and
placed.
below the but it was and that looked horrible too, and I finally was just like, I got to get rid of this freaking my kid's name is my oldest kid's name is Sophie, so I wanted the her name to be tattooed in like the Kiss font,
Hmm.
right? So just like cool heavy metal. And so I wrote it like how I thought would look cool, and I gave it to the tattoo guy. I was like, this is kind of what I want, like this style. And he traced it and he did my writing, which was horrible. So it said Sophie in this horrible faux kiss font.
Right.
And I remember going out the first time, and one of my buddies comes up to me, he goes, "What's Sopnik?" And I go, "What?" He goes, why does it say Sopnik on your arm? I was like, it says Sophie. He's like, dude, it says Sopnik. Because like the way the letters were, it
Yeah.
literally. So anyway, so I got a cover up over my kid's name, which didn't go over well at first. They were like,
Yeah.
what? I don't understand. And I got this. And then, so that was the first tattoo. And
Welcome to Sober Dad Crew, the podcast where we talk about all things sobriety, recovery, parenting, music, tattoos, work, and more. For more information, please visit soberdadcrew.com. Wow, welcome to episode 50. When I started, this was a totally DIY affair, and it still is. But when I started, I wasn't sure what would happen. Would anyone want to be a guest? And if I got guests, would anyone listen? And I did get guests, and people do listen. And folks have reached out to say how much the podcast means to them. And that is so totally gratifying. Sober Dad Crew is built on my belief that there is power in everyone's story. And we learn and grow if we listen to these stories. And I want to thank everyone who has appeared on Sober Dad Crew and been willing to share their very personal stories. I've never met the majority of the guests, We hit record and away we go. I also want to thank my family who supports the time it takes for me to work on Sober Dad Crew. And that said,
Now it's just like, this one, I think this one you'd love. I don't know if nobody can see it, but
yeah,
do you know what that is? Can you tell?
I can't tell. I mean, I think is that a TIE fighter or
It's
something?
Galaga.
Galaga. Oh, right. Okay. Old school video game.
Old school video game. Yeah. Tattoos are freaking great. Like
Yeah, I
I
have a
have to
lot
get at
of.
least one a year. It's like,
I've slowed down a little, but I did have a cover up too because I had like an old school pinup cocktail waitress on my leg. And then I had a daughter, and I thought that
wait,
was
like
weird.
Sailor Jerry type of like,
Yeah.
okay.
And, then I had a daughter, so that's sort of like weird. And then I was sober, and I was like, that's like doubly weird.
Yeah.
So I got a big like anchor over it because that just was like, because my grandmother's name was Constance. And so the notion of like constancy and like staying
Right.
true felt better. But yeah, it's been, I did get one, I've had one tattoo since like post COVID, but it is, I love the whole process of like conceptualizing and all that, and then like getting it done. Just it ain't cheap all the time, especially if you're
No.
getting something good. You got to pay for something good,
Thi- Ironically, this one was 4 sittings, right? It was horrible.
Yeah,
And after the second sitting, the tattoo artist disappeared. And my buddy owns the place, and he calls me. He's like, "Hey, just want you to know we had to let so and so go." And I was like, "Wait, what?"
I'm fucking
Like he's in the
halfway through
middle.
a tattoo.
Yeah, it's literally halfway. He's like, "Yeah, he was high and he fucked up someone's tattoo." So I was like, "Wow, that's ironic, right?" So I'm
Yeah,
like, "You know what?" He's like, "I'll finish it for you." I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna find him and I'm gonna let him finish it." So I went up finding him, and he was at a different place, and he finished it, and he did a great job. But I just thought it was just ironic. I was like, I got to get this guy the benefit of the doubt,
yeah, or like
especially if he's got
right,
a problem,
right, or maybe he'll get better, right?
maybe he'll get better, right? Or maybe he would have messed up my tattoo.
Yeah,
Um, I wrote a piece about tattoos because people always ask me like, what does that mean? And like half of them kind of mean something, and the other half don't mean anything.
right. You
Like,
just like them.
are you a meaning guy or?
I have a lot. Like I have my right forearm is a lot of my favorite books
Oh, cool.
and the
Okay.
graphics from like those books. Um, I have an owl just because I like owls. I have a
Huh.
phoenix that says greatly blessed underneath it because my grandmother always talked about being greatly blessed. I have my kids' names. Um, so yeah, there's like, I guess, some meaning, but I have like a dragonfly just because I like dragonflies,
Yeah,
so
it
it's a
just looks
little
good.
like it doesn't always have to be like serious.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
you got to just want to be stuck with it, I guess, or not really, but it costs more to get them removed and is more painful
Yeah. I don't.
to get them removed.
My dad at 76 or whatever got his first tattoo, and now he's got like 4.
There
Like
you
he gets
go.
like tattoos all the time now, like the bald eagle and the American flag and to the republic. Like he lives down in South Carolina, but anyway,
Right, he's just fitting in.
yeah, he's just fitting in exactly. Um, and I need to know about punk. Like I
Yeah.
need
Or
to walk away with. I mean, you're gonna have to email me what to buy, but
no, I
I
was saying, I while we were talking, I was jotting it down. So I think I got 3, but I can also email you.
I
But
I bought this specifically because I wanted to note something. This supposedly this is a great punk soundtrack from Return of the Living Dead, and I put it on and it's just scratched everywhere. So
yeah,
I can't even. It's
I mean,
whatever. But
soundtrack wise, Repo Man, that came
okay,
up in that, I think, that interview with Tristan
it
was
did. It
Repo
did.
Man. Brilliantly strange movie. Um, if you can still find it or stream it, but that's a pretty classic punk soundtrack. But I think I'll throw out London Calling the Clash because I think the
Okay.
Clash is like the first band that helped me like align like politics and aesthetic and all that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
also like Prince and David Bowie. I mean, they're
Right.
not punk, but I was sort of joke like Prince talked to me about sex. You're old enough to have seen Purple Rain and probably Fast Times at Ridgemont High. at
Oh God,
very
yeah.
pivotal times in your life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Damone, he's the man.
Damone.
If I
N-
can only still buy tickets from him, man, no fees, no just like
Yeah, he
scalp
probably did not
markup and that's it.
survive Me Too. Damone would not survive the Me Too
No,
era.
definitely not.
Um, Social Distortion, Sober
Okay.
Dad also, and I think Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell. I mean, they have a bunch of albums. And I think also like The Exploited, Punk's Not Dead, which is this British punk band, like was one of the first ones that I kind of listened to. I mean, other ones back in the day for me were like Suicidal Tendencies, which
Oh, I
maybe
used to
they're,
love Suicidal
yeah, so
Tendencies.
there's like those intersects. They're like pretty thrash. And of course, the bass player from Suicidal Tendencies now is in Metallica.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Trujillo, whatever his
yeah.
name is. That's
So
right.
he replaced Jason Newsted.
Newstead. Yeah,
Yeah.
they screwed him. They screwed him, man.
Yeah, I don't know
Not
what
good.
happened there. I mean, I'm sort of like I dig Metallica on on a level. I'm not deep Metallica, but I like also appreciate what they have done, you
Yeah.
know, and put some depth to music. But those, I think those albums and bands like I still listen to. Um, we talked about The Cure, not really a punk band, but kind of like punk adjacent in its own. I don't know how you describe The Cure, but still a band I love.
Yeah. That whole new wave what was it? WLIR was the new wave radio station here in Long Island. And it was just like Erasure, Yaz, REM, Depeche Mode,
Yeah,
Echo and the Bunnymen, like all those like new wave bands that were out that were so great that I made fun of when I was, just listening to metal. And then all of a sudden I started like loving new wave.
yeah. There's somebody like north of me running for political office. I don't know what party they're or anything, but their name is DEYO. But the font is such that the Y really looks like a V unless you look closely. So I'm like,
Ah,
Devo. I would vote for Devo,
yeah.
100%.
Devo just reminds me of early MTV. I just can't
Yeah,
not think
like
of
we
early
just
MTV.
remember the early MTV, but like Headbangers Ball,
Oh,
and then
who was before Ricky Roth? No, Ricky Rothman was the first host of Headbangers Ball, I think.
what was the one? Because then there was like the more alternative one on Sunday, 120 Minutes
Okay.
with Matt Pinfield, also a sober
Yes.
dad.
He's the bald guy, right?
He's the bald guy.
Yeah, I like that guy. He's good. He's
Yeah, he
good.
seems like cool. I reached out to him on Instagram, but never heard back.
You know who I should try to get um oh God, I'm going to blank on his name now. Not all right, so Different Strokes, the TV show,
Yep,
right? Who's the older brother? Who's Willis? What's his name?
Todd something.
Bridges, Todd Bridges.
Yeah.
So I know him from streaming because he streams Fortnite and he's a really good guy and he's sober and he's a dad.
Oh,
And
that would be
he,
amazing. I
yeah,
used to watch that show.
oh yeah,
What you talking about, Mr. What was his name? Drummond or whatever? I don't even.
Willis. What you
Mr.
talking about,
Willis.
Willis?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's embracing it too, but he's great. He's such a nice guy and he streams Fortnite and,
Yeah, that would be
talks to
cool.
people.
I mean, and that's also a show because the sister on
Dana
that show,
Plato.
right? She died,
Yeah.
right, of an OD. I
Yeah.
think is how she passed. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that
It's
would be
just,
cool.
yeah, I'll try to think if there's anybody else too. I definitely know a bunch of people. But yeah, I love this podcast, man. I'm so happy that I was able to do it. I was like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, I gotta be on that podcast, man. I gotta talk to this because I started listening and hearing all the shit we had in common, and I was like, this is just weird. It's
Yeah,
too
my
weird.
story kind of like ekes out in, bits and pieces throughout the whole thing. But yeah, this was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I super appreciate you being on. I'll let you know when it posts. If you can just send me a picture,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Yeah.
I'm
Definitely.
hoping to get it posted Friday. We'll see how the week goes, but
And I want you to write something for Sober Not Subtle.
yeah, just send me the info and like the word count and all that stuff. That would be fun.
Nice and 500 words or less. It's
Okay,
super
I
easy
can do it.
peasy. Write about whatever you want. But yeah, man, you're doing a great job. Seriously, like this is good stuff, and keep doing it. I know it's not easy to stay consistent with stuff like this. Believe me, I've
Yeah,
been there,
well,
and it's
it
not
is.
easy.
You just gotta just keep on keeping on. I mean, that's just the way, right? That's
Yeah,
life.
yeah. And if I ever make it up there, I mean, Roscoe, it's kind of upstate. It's on the way to Ithaca. Wait, you're in
Yeah.
Ithaca, right?
Well, I'm in Aurora now, so like I work in Ithaca, but
Because Ithaca is like 2.5 hours from Roscoe.
okay, yeah, and like
Because my
5
friend,
from Manhattan,
yeah, that's
probably.
exactly it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because my buddy's daughter goes to Ithaca, so they stay at my house halfway to Ithaca for the night, and then they leave and they go another 2.5 hours. So,
yeah.
but
I'm kind of like sort of between Ithaca and Syracuse, like, but not a straight line. But on Cuga Lake, I'm just further north, where Wells College used to be, which is
all right.
closed. So
Well, when this comes out, I'll share the shit out of it. We'll blast it out on social
awesome.
media big time. Get some people
All
listening. Okay.